Well, Dana, we're seeing what is basically a one-man race for the Republican presidential nomination. Take a look here. Our brand new numbers in this poll conducted by SSRS among Republican and Republican-leaning voters. You have Donald Trump at 52%, majority support.
What's up, guys? It's your boy, Benny. The calls are coming from inside the house. You ever heard that old horror line from Scream, right? Like, the murderer is in the building with us. It's so terrifying. Something terrible is going to happen, and the person's already in the home. And that's what's happening right now with Joe Biden. Now, let me explain. There is an entire network that is designed in order to keep Joe Biden in power, and that network, the nexus of it, the very core of it, has to do with the corporate media. The corporate media, the reason that Joe Biden's in power, after all. And there is an operation called Operation Mockingbird, where the intel agencies effectively use, like a mockingbird, the corporate press in order to manufacture official narratives, in order to convince or fool the American people and the American public into what they want them to think. Tucker Carlson talked about this at length in a recent interview.
People I know well and have worked with at different networks. I'm thinking of one in particular, a national security reporter who was just a mouthpiece for the Pentagon and the CIA and is knowingly telling lies on their behalf. That's very, very common, very common. And I can think of a number of people at CNN who I know for a fact are doing that exact thing. And so, I mean, they're reading government propaganda from the intel agencies knowingly. And I'm sure they've got some internal rationale that allows them to get up in the morning and face themselves despite having done something that dishonest. But I'm just telling you, bottom line, I know that is true.
So Tucker Carlson goes on in this interview to enumerate multiple CNN people that are actively working as mouthpieces for intel agencies. So whilst you may open up the Daily Mail and see headlines like this, Biden behind, Trump by 1 point, trailing Nikki Haley by 6, shocking poll shows Joe. 2/3 of Democrats want another option. 73% of Americans are seriously concerned about his mental competency. They're not used to opening up deep state news and seeing on the front page of CNN, this according to our friend Charlie Kirk, the devastating verdict voters delivered on Biden. This is from CNN. This is from state news propaganda. America's frustration with Biden could set back Trump to win back the White House in 2024. Most Democrat voters want an alternative. Wow. I mean, this is panic time when you get headlines like this. What does Charlie have to say about it? 14 months before his fate is decided, Biden's unpopularity may be brewing the only possible conditions which a disgraced and anti-democratic ex-president who might be convicted as a felon be elected. Squeeze back into power. The chief rationale behind Biden's bid for a second term is that he is the best positioned Democrat to beat Trump again. But unless political conditions change significantly in the coming months, they're going to get much worse, actually. The narrative may be in doubt. Translation, if Dems stop believing that Biden can beat Trump, they will throw him overboard and initiate Plan B. And that is precisely what they are saying here inside of this article. Again, this is on the front page of CNN. This is panic time for the regime. This is a warning siren from the nexus of control for the regime inside of their media ecosystem, the owned and operated corporate media ecosystem. Interested in a Biden-Trump alternative? You're not alone. Read this. What did it find? Key findings from CNN's poll find that nearly half of registered voters say that any Republican nominee would be a better choice than Biden. Biden's job approval rating stands below 39%. Whew. 58% says his policies have made economic conditions worse, and a smaller share of the public than ever says that he has the stamina sharpness to effectively serve as president. Ooh, boy. CNN goes on in this article to state very definitively some really interesting stuff here about how would you get an alternative. Well, you'd have to do it immediately. You'd have to find an alternative real fast. There's no nationwide date by which candidates must declare candidacies. If additional Democrats were to challenge Biden, they would do so with a 50-state patchwork party primary process. Each state has its own primary rules and deadlines. Nevada requires primary candidates to submit paperwork by mid-October. South Carolina requires submission by November. So you better get rolling if you plan on primarying Joe Biden. But the Democrat National Committee, at Biden's behest, is currently locked in a standoff with Iowa and New Hampshire, which for decades have held the first-in-the-nation caucus. Biden wants to be essentially anointed king in South Carolina, where he's already got this system wired. Biden didn't win either state in the 2020 primaries. In an effort to reward South Carolina primary that reignited his campaign, Democrats moved both states out of their traditional positions under the National Party rules. Iowa Democrats haven't yet said if their nominating process will take place. New Hampshire government is set on holding its first primary date, still hasn't announced. The end result may be Democrats essentially ignore Iowa's caucus or New Hampshire's primary, or RFK wins those, which he will. Biden may not even be on the ballot in New Hampshire, as predicted, carries forward. Uh-oh. Are there alternatives? Well, Robert F. Kennedy is the noted alternative. I'm not going to repeat, obviously, the pablum there. The fact that notable progressive Bernie Sanders, the Vermont independent, who's run for president twice as Democrat, are not clamoring for a Biden alternative is a tell that there is a motivated base of the left wing that is at least content with Biden's chances and his performance so far. Well, that is exactly right. Biden has spent his entire presidency appealing to his extreme left-wing, hardcore left-wing communist base. They're saying that Democrats are extremely jittery and then that translates over to Trump, which, of course, that's not actually true. The McLaughlin poll here shows that Trump beats Biden in an electoral landslide. McLaughlin Associates, again, you can't take this lightly. They're one of the most prestigious polling firms in American history. McLaughlin Associates saying that Trump is beating Biden in battlegrounds 49 to 41%. 8-point turnaround. That 10% of the voters have buyer's remorse. So this is what CNN is pushing. Wild stuff. Independent running, a unity ticket perhaps. There's been cases for that. Some people saying that there may be a unity ticket being created right now. But yeah, it's total and complete panic time. When you type in CNN.com and get this as your lead headline, and when you flip on CNN, as maybe one person does, I think we're the only people that have CNN on because we have to monitor these things, and you see reporting like this from this morning, absolutely the harshest 3 minutes I've ever seen Biden get on any corporate media channel anywhere.
And those numbers are looking rough for President Biden. It could be a troubling sign for Democrats and the president's hopes for re-election in 2024. Biden's approval rating sinking to 39%. Nearly 60% of voters think Biden's policies are making the economy worse, and close to 70% of Democrats want somebody else to run for president. His overall approval rating among Democratic voters, that's slipping from July. And when it comes to hypothetical matchups between Biden and the leading GOP presidential candidates, it's a tight race with no clear winner.
Except for Nikki Haley, who in this hypothetical matchup is leading President Biden by 6 points. Donald Trump ahead by 1 point of Biden. This all comes right before President Biden heads off on a big foreign trip. He's set to meet with world leaders at the G20 summit in India. Happy to be joined this morning in studio by our political director, David Chalian, with all this new polling. And I mean, some people think polls. This one, to me, is totally riveting and fascinating about how Americans think Joe Biden is handling his job, including Democrats.
Yeah, and it's going to set off some alarm bells in the White House, no doubt. You noted his approval rating is down at 39%, 61% of Americans disapprove. He's been hanging at that low point, guys, for quite some time. We talk about the mood of the country 14 months out from a presidential election. Not that great. 3 in 10 Americans, that's it, say things are going well in the country. 7 in 10 say things are going badly in the country. And 58% of Americans in this poll say that Joe Biden's policies have actually worsened economic conditions in the country. Only 24% say they've improved economic conditions. This is why we hear him talking about Bidenomics every day he's out and about in the country.
David, the president is the oldest president in history. He was this morning. He will be tomorrow. That's just the reality. And White House officials acknowledge that, don't love talking about it, but have long made the case that's not the kind of pervasive issue for voters. It's not going to be the determinant factor. What does this poll show?
Well, it's certainly on the mind of voters. We'll see how important it becomes, but it clearly is a major concern. We asked folks, Phil, are you seriously concerned that Biden's age might negatively affect his ability to serve a full term? 3/4 of Americans are indeed seriously concerned. 3/4 of Americans don't agree on anything, but there's concern there. You see it here too, seriously concerned about his current mental and physical competence being negatively impacted by his age, and seriously concerned that his understanding of the next generation's concerns are impacted. 68% say that. And the economy, as we talked about, that is what is behind these numbers. Why Joe Biden is in a sort of dead heat, margin of error race with nearly every Republican tested. Poppy noted that Nikki Haley is the exception to that. She's running outside the margin of error. But look at this. Trump, margin of error race, no clear leader. DeSantis, Pence, Scott, Ramaswamy, Christie, they are all with no clear leader. And I just want to note, guys, one other thing that is going to cause agita for the White House team is this motivation factor. Are you extremely motivated to vote in next year's presidential election? Look at this. Republicans and Republican-leaning independents have a 10-point advantage over Democrats on that score.
Yeah, that really matters, how people feel.